Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Monday night. It is draft week. We've made it. All the preparation, all the tape studying, all the long sleepless hours of looking into IDPs. It doesn't really end. But it is draft week, so at least we'll get to see some fruits of our labors. We get to see if some of these guys that we liked and disliked get drafted, go undrafted. Who knows? Tonight, we're going to have some fun. We're not necessarily going to dig into more IDP conversations. We are going to basically pull names out of our butts and guess who's going where. So we are going to guess some of the Kraig put together a great little game we're going to do, and it's going to be kind of a first player taken scenario. So we're going to talk through who we think is going to go first, where they're going to go, and we're going to talk through the different IDP positions that way. We're also going to take a guess about how many IDPs are going to get drafted in the draft. I did a little bit of research and digging into the last probably 5 years worth of draft classes. We've got some fun stats for you. So it's going to be a cool night. As always, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We love to talk trades and talk all things fantasy. So we are more than welcome to answer your questions live. And I want your takes as well. So as we answer these questions, throw your comments in the chat. Let us know who your players are going to be. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. I promise at the end of the night, who knows? Anything's possible. But before we do any of that stuff, don't forget, if you like, do the like button, subscribe, hit the notification icon, all the things I tell you when you watch our clips on YouTube, because YouTube needs it. They like it. Kraig, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing all right. It's been a fine day, busy, productive, rough night. Like we were talking about before, kids want to get outside. The weather's nice. It was in the high 60s, I think tonight might have been pushing the 70s. Looked like it could rain, but didn't. So good weather to get outside and run. But then they don't want to stop, and then there's fighting over, oh, I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to go to bed. I'm not tired. And you know how it goes. But that's the joy of having kids. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, although there is a lot of that too. How was your night?
Much of the same. It was actually sunny all day here in kind of mid upper 60s, most of it, and I have a two-story house. So basically, what happens is when I'm down here prepping for the show, each of them will come down at various points to ask questions, basically to not go to sleep because they know Dad's not up there with them. They're going to wander around. So. Streaming nights, all bets are off until 9:30, and then by 9:30, I know they're probably sleeping. But yeah, it's a good night. You know, being a dad's a blast. There's fun, there's crazy, there's a little bit of everything in between. It is what it is, and it was definitely a Monday. Work was exhaustive today, but that seems to be how Mondays go. So our boy MathQuest says, in terms of IDP, what is your overall impression of this rookie class? So I think it's kind of my impression of the overall draft class. I think it's kind of top heavy, and then there's some really interesting players kind of mixed throughout. I can't say that I know for certain this is a good draft class, but I know that I like a lot of the high-end guys, and I'm intrigued by a lot of the mix in between. So offensive or defensive, there's guys throughout there where I'm like, I saw things on tape that I liked and I'm interested, but I just don't know for certain. How do you feel about this draft class, Kraig?
I think it's hard to tell with just sort of disparity that we have of people that we're comparing in terms of how much they've played. I mean, you have guys that have played as starters for 3 or 4 years, and then you have someone like Gregory Rousseau who played one game his freshman year. Then he had that amazing sophomore year. That's all we're getting out of him before he goes into the league. That's a huge difference between someone who's played 3 or 4 years as a starter and how you're comparing them on your draft board. For us, it's one thing, but these guys that are putting millions of dollars and their careers on the line for drafting some of these guys, I mean, to me, it feels like it's more stressful and just weird than ever. When you're looking specifically at the defensive side of it, it seems like the defensive line, more so the interior, there's just not a lot of great talent, and you're not going to see a whole lot probably go the first 2 days till maybe you get to the end of the second day. I think it's a deep cornerback class, and I think it's a pretty deep safety class. Outside of that, there's a lot of really intriguing edge rushers, like you said, but most of them you see great stuff on tape sometimes, and then other times you're making like, what the heck are they doing? Or they just don't have a lot of tape. And like Rousseau, then he had a really poor pro day and probably cost himself a ton of money by doing so. So every year we say, oh, it's hit and miss in that. I think you're going to definitely be able to find guys in this draft class that you like where they went, you like their skill set that you'll be able to focus in on, but it's not going to be sort of like last year, like you said overall, where it was just much deeper. It felt.
Yeah, I definitely, I think Gregory Rousseau and some of the other opt outs from last year, they kind of show you what happens. I'm not saying that Rousseau didn't prepare for the pro day, but you could tell guys that were ready for the different drills. Like if you look at like the Jamar Chase of the world, he looked electric at his pro day, and he hadn't been on a football field, in a game action in over a year. Where Rousseau looked off,
Yeah,
and you can see that. So I'm wondering if that was part of the equation, is depending on how they trained and prepared. We
yeah.
know Chase was with the top of the top. I don't offhand know exactly where Rousseau was training, so that could have been part of it. Who knows? I mean, it could have been. The unfortunate thing with a guy like Rousseau is you have to wonder, did he get lucky one year and it was kind of lightning in a bottle, or I mean, just like you've said countless times on these shows, he didn't prove it. He just gave you one year, so
Yeah.
he didn't give you enough to prove whether or not that's something he's going to continue to do. Over on Facebook, is Kyle Pitts going to be a risk or reward pickup depending on what team he goes to, or does it matter based off his talent? I don't think it matters. I mean, I think this dude's just he's I think there's three elite players in this draft class, and they're all offensive players. I think it's Trevor Lawrence, Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts. I think those are kind of the top end talents of the class. And I don't know that it matters what system those guys go to, because I think they can play anywhere. They can do anything. Pitts can be involved in the blocking game. He can be split out as a wide receiver. I mean, look at his numbers. I mean, how many times they show graphics of his numbers compared to Megatron's? I mean, you know, he isn't that dynamic of an athlete for nothing. I mean, a team could use him as a true wide receiver if they really wanted to.
Yeah. I would feel comfortable taking him anywhere he went, and someone said, oh, like at quarterback X, I don't care where they go. I'd be fine with him. Like, well, if you really want to play that game, he goes to Kansas City, you're going to be fine taking, Justin Fields high. Probably not. I mean, and I'm not saying that has a 1% chance of happening, but it's not zero. If Pitts goes to somewhere like Kansas City that has two great weapons established in front of him, I don't care. It's a great spot for him because there's people taking targets away. It's a decent learned long-term spot because Kelsey is older than I think a lot of people think. Pitts, like you said, is one of those guys I think you can put him anywhere and you're going to be happy with what's around him.
Mm.
Now, some place like he goes to, let's say he goes to the Bengals, you know, depending what the Bengals do, you can still have concerns about, all right, what is Joe Burrow going to have for availability? Is he going to stay healthy? I mean, those would be legitimate things to wonder about, but I'm still not going to be avoiding him. I'm just probably looking at a lower upside in my head in terms of what I'm expecting for the first year or so.
Because if they take him at their pick, you know that Joe Burrow's only going to get about halfway through the season before he's injured with more cuts up and down his legs. I mean,
Depending on what they do in the rest of the draft. I mean, if they took Pitts and then took, offensive linemen in the next 2 or 3 rounds, depending on how it pans out, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I knew this tackle was better than that one. If they have a plan to address their offensive line, and they do, I'm going to feel fine. If they ignore it, I'm going to have big concerns. So,
absolutely. So there you go. There's that. Okay, so news and notes wise, there are none. I mean, this week, last week and a half, 2 weeks, I don't trust any of the news and notes that comes out because it's all smoke screens this time of year. I've been combing through guys, big boards and mock drafts to see if anything really stood out, and nothing's really changed at this point in the off season. Everything is kind of what it is. We know what we know. I would tell you guys that we've got ADP, and we've been doing rookie mock drafts. So all the information we have is on rotoheat.com leading up to your rookie drafts. 'Cause I know a lot of leagues will start drafting Sunday, Monday, and on. So, make sure you go there, check out and see what people are doing. The NFL draft's going to do what it's going to do. We are giving you actual individuals and what they're picking, and it's a lot of data. We are doing lots of mock drafts and compiling that information. So that'll help you get ready for your rookie drafts. And then come Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to be doing mock drafts as soon as the rounds end. So each night we are going to go live, and you are going to watch us mock draft based on what we've seen, what's going on. Let's see if anything's different. So make sure you keep it locked in with us so that you can stay up to date on ADP for your rookie drafts. You know who's going to go where, or at least have a good idea. With that being said, let's get to it. So this is your baby, Kraig, so I'll let you run it, and I'll just sit back and enjoy the show.
Well, I guess we'll start here. In terms of the first IDP player taken, who do you think it will be, and where do you think they're going to go? And you can answer that in whatever order you'd like.
So I did this mock a few times in my head today because I have the same answer for both your first two questions.
Okay.
First IDP and first cornerback taken. I think it's Patrick Surtain, and I think it's your Dallas Cowboys. When I look at Dallas's team, they have kind of a bit of defensive needs that they could address, but nothing high enough. I mean, Parsons would have been the only other pick that high that I could see them taking, and I don't see them doing that. I just don't see them fitting how their linebackers are with what they already have. Surtain, on the other hand, I think they could slot him in there, and he could be a starter immediately. I know they've got some talent there, but I don't see an edge guy or a defensive lineman that they could take that high, because that's really the other need I was looking at for them to address. They could go offensive lineman, but I think Slater and Sewell are gone by the time they pick it. Was it 10?
Yeah.
So Patrick Surtain, cornerback, Alabama. What about you?
So I agree with the team. So I do have Dallas taking the first one, and the only person, like you said, I could see outside of a cornerback would be Parsons, and I'd messed around with in various mocks having him go to Detroit because I think you would know more than me, but I think they could use someone like him potentially. Same thing with Carolina. I know they have Shaq, but they could use linebacker help, and I think he'd be a good replacement long term for Kuechly after being without a guy like that for a year. It doesn't seem like Parsons is probably going to go that high from the rumors out there, and I know you said last 2 weeks up to the draft or so, you don't want to listen to a whole lot of what they're claiming. But seems to be legitimate concerns about maturity and or off the field things, or they're doing a hit job on him. Clearly, it's one of the two. Could be a combination. I'd be comfortable if Dallas had a bigger need at linebacker if he went there. And again, I don't think they will. But with Sean Lee retiring and Leighton Vander Esch just seemingly never being able to be healthy, I wouldn't be excited about it, but I wouldn't be upset about it either. As it stands, I have the other, for me, top cornerback, J.C. Horn. I have going to Dallas, and the reason is, as a Dallas fan, I'm too well aware that Jerry Jones doesn't always just go by what the consensus is or what people feel the top person is. He's known to be impulsive, and it still sounds like he has the ultimate decision over who they're taking. And that whole thing where Kyle Pitts came out and had said that Horn was the toughest defender he'd faced in college, that really got a lot of traction in the Dallas sort of Cowboys news stream. And that's the sort of thing that I know sticks with Jerry, just with how he's the flashy, the big names when they say something, when they do something, goes a little off ball. It probably is Surtain, but I just have a feeling that there's a lot better chance than people think that it's going to be Horn over him. And I'm not saying it's the right call, but it's just a gut feeling that I have. And I've been wrong plenty of times before, so we'll find out in a few days. Earlier in the draft for Dallas, and, well, not really. Very early in the draft, a lot in my life. But
Well, and the cornerback class, I think, has a lot of really nice guys at the top. I mean, Horn, obviously Surtain, Greg Newsome, Eric Stokes. I mean, there's plenty of names that could be early second to first round corners. So whoever your guy is, I mean, ultimately I think Dallas goes at the cornerback position
Yeah.
just because value and need will kind of align there. I just can't see them reach it. Like the other needs I thought of, offensive linemen because of guys getting hurt, and things like that. They really could use that, but they drafted Tyler Baez last year to kind of be the center after Travis Frederick. So maybe he develops. I'm not entirely sure. So I said, you know what? They're probably going defense with their first round pick. Um, for me, I kind of see them as a perfect option to trade down, though,
Yeah.
because I could see them going after Micah Parsons. And even, to your point, I think even before the last 2 weeks, Parsons has slid down in a lot of conversations. A lot of people are talking, late teens, early 20s for a guy like Parsons. So it wouldn't surprise me if a team that thinks they can get him later will trade down. I wanted to take him with Detroit. I wanted to say my first choice would be defense for number 7, but you know everything I've heard about Dan Campbell and everything I've read about people that have been speaking that are close to him, uh, it just seems like he's an old school kind of guy where you build from the trenches out. And Detroit's right side of their line is trash. I mean, Halapuli Pali Vaitai is not good. They spent a ton of money and he's stuck. They'll probably slide him into guard so that they can cover him up with a tackle. And if you can get a good right tackle, Sean Slater, Penei Sewell, either one of them, I'm perfectly fine with.
Yeah.
I like Slater more. Sewell's fine with me. We have the left sides covered. With Jonah Jackson and kid from Ohio State, left tackle we've had for years from Ohio State. That's name is whiffing me right
Decker?
now. Yeah, Taylor Decker. Thank you. And then we have Ragnow at center. So the offensive line is then covered at that point. As much as defense is desperately in need, Alex Anzalone I think is a under the radar linebacker signing for Detroit. I think he steps in and is a fine starter to go with Jamie Collins. You find a Mike in round 2, 3, 4, something like that. Take a flyer on Surratt or somebody that you could plug in there. I wouldn't hate it. And their secondary is going to be better than it was, even with Aaron Glenn stepping in and grooming a lot of these guys. I think he takes the young players and ups their game just because he's got the knowledge. I mean, remember, he's what was he, a 13, 14-year vet, and he was a Pro Bowler, and I mean, he's solid. He knows what he's doing. So I love the pick. I think it's smart. I think Dallas for both of us was smart because I think they go defense, and they're probably the first team to do it.
All right, and so that answers our first cornerback taken with a team and pick as well. So moving to the second part of the defensive backfield, safety. And it'll be interesting to see what you say because I don't see a whole lot of names for safety at all mentioned in the first round this year. But who did you have here?
There's only one name. It's Trevin Moehrig. I mean, that's the one that I hear a lot of people say. But I'm going to go a different way. I know I've seen a ton of people mock him to Baltimore at the end of the first. I'm gonna tag him with Jacksonville's second first round pick. I think Jacksonville could use some help. I know they drafted corner last year early.
Yep.
They got Henderson. I think they could use some safety help. So give me Trevin Moehrig to Jacksonville. I think it's a fun pick. Moehrig, I don't know if he's my favorite safety in this class. I know he's not my favorite fantasy safety. I think Holland and Richie Grant are up near the top there for me right now. But I like him. What's your take?
Yeah, so I agree. He's the only one, honestly, that I've seen mocked in the first round. I've seen Holland in the second round a few times. So, you all right there?
Yep. Nope. I'm good.
Where he goes will be interesting because I've seen him up as high as to the Raiders a few times, and it seems like the Raiders are adjusting their secondary every first round pick, and it just isn't getting better.
Yeah.
And they have enough other needs that I think would be seen as a better value for them even there. So right now I do have him to Baltimore. I mean, I think Baltimore has a nice secondary, but he would just provide sort of that. And he has a lot of different things that he can do, but compared to the safeties they currently have, he would be a better version of sort of that roaming free safety that can get all over the field and make plays in the air and just gives them an element that they don't need. They have a very good secondary still. Peters, Humphrey, Clark, Elliott played all right last year. And with 2 picks, Baltimore, I think, is going to be a wild card to potentially move up and do something. You know, we'll see if they choose to or choose to sit back. And, you know, that last pick of the first round always has value for a team seeing a guy that they want, they could get the extra year of the contract for, or, you know, someone else just takes the guy that they want, sort of like KC did the year prior. So,
Yeah. And with what the Raiders have done recently to just sink their offensive line, I think that's purely like I assume they would go after a guy like a Kwity or somebody because they need defensive line help, even though they've sunk a ton of money into their defensive line. I mean, they got rid of Mo Hurst, they got rid of their offensive lineman, they got rid of Arden Key. Like, I don't know what. I mean, they keep making more holes for themselves everything they do. So I don't know. I got nothing on that.
with signing Yannick to that big deal and then having Crosby still, and Farrell, I don't think they're probably going to go defensive end. Like Raiders have done stranger things, and I think Pay, if you really wanted him to, could play inside on that defensive front. Again, fantasy wise, I think it would be a disaster for those hoping that he gets a nice landing spot. Um, yeah, the Raiders, I think it's going to be offensive line or probably someone in the secondary again, which, you know, continuing to throw. I can't think of the aphorism, but you're continuing to throw bad parts at a problem and you're not fixing it.
Oh, no.
Is the way it seems with the Raiders.
Putting a band-aid on a volcano. That's the way I
Yeah,
always say it. Yeah.
there you go.
You know, I don't get it. I know that tells me Derek Carr is going to stay their quarterback for the foreseeable future because they have to look at those lines. I mean, they just have so many holes now on both offensive and defensive lines. It's like I get it. It makes me feel good about like guys like Nick Kwiatkowski and some of those because I know they probably should still stay playable. But I don't even, I'm like, Mike Mayock, what are you doing, dude? Like, you need to tell John Gruden to stop selling everybody off.
Wait until they take like some like Kadarius Tony or something that they completely don't need on offense just to mess with everyone.
Right? That's a Raiders thing to do. Add another guy just like Henry Ruggs to your receiving core, and then you
Yep,
really. My Brian Edwards shares will continue to cry as you do that.
mine too. All too many that I have.
Yeah, right.
All right, we'll move to one that will be interesting. I don't think we probably have the same thing for this interior lineman. So we're gonna sort of keep defensive end and that outside linebacker in edge talk. We know all the guys potentially aren't going to be used in that same sort of way. But as we've been talking up the edge position for about a year now, when it first started getting added on Flea Flicker and a couple other sites, we're going to combine those. So interior lineman, who do you got?
So this is a tough one. When it comes to interior linemen, I like Levi Onwuzurike and I like Christian Barmore. So I kept trying to look at where do I think they fit with a team that could draft them. Like, I don't think a guy goes in the first round for interior defensive line. I think he goes second round. And I think my Detroit Lions are going to take Christian Barmore. I have a feeling that, they need defensive tackle help. I have no doubt about that. And so I have just kind of the sneaky suspicion that they do it again. I know they've done it recently with Ashawn Robinson going to the Alabama well. I'm not the hugest Barmore fan. I think he's the second best D tackle in the class behind Onwuzurike. But give me Christian Barmore to the Detroit Lions. That's going to be in the second round, though. So that'll be, 39th overall. I think there's 39 in the second round.
So I have, from just looking at all this, again, there's probably going to be one interior lineman, if that, taken in the first round, kind of like you alluded to. I think Barmore goes in the first. I think that he has a lot of traits that people like, and if you put him in a situation where he's able to grow with other talent around him, something like Indianapolis would be a good spot where he'd be next to Buckner. Um, but I think my guess right now is he goes to the Browns. They had gotten Clowney, they released Richardson, and they also, I think they still have Tack they had signed. So they sort of have three defensive ends, but they don't really have a whole lot. They have Ogunjobi, Billings, but they could add more to that. And I think you take a guy like Barmore that has shown flashes, especially in the playoffs in college, of being able to have that elite skill set in both rushing the passer, what he'd like out of a D tackle, but also being a good run defender. put him in a situation like that with veterans that he can learn from and grow, I think would be a really good situation for him. So I do think he goes in the first round, and at the moment, like I said, I think the Browns.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like if they don't, because they released Sheldon Richardson, but not long after they released him, you heard rumors that they were willing to sign him back, and he hasn't signed with anybody that I'm
Yeah,
aware of. So it's like it's interesting to see. It's almost like they have a guy they want to get. If they can draft him, they won't pay Richardson. If they can't draft him, they pay Richardson. I'm just not entirely sure what to make of what the Browns are doing. Uh, I would have rather keep Richardson than go sign Clowney. I like Clowney as a player, but you're only really going to get elite production for what, 3 to 5 games a year, maybe. I mean, maybe
it might be
more.
more across from Garrett
Yeah,
now.
maybe more with Garrett there, but it's like Richardson was a solid all-around defensive tackle all the time. Like you really did get a consistent play out of him, and I really like the player, but we'll see. Maybe he goes somewhere else, or maybe he just waits and resigns with the Browns because they're a contender. I mean, in their division, they should be able to compete for the top spot. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and in
so
the division, it's sort of like what the Ravens did too, if that's the case, where they sort of seemingly have this deal with Villanueva after the draft. All right, we'll sign you because we got rid of Brown.
right,
Um, if that works out for him, I mean, Villanueva is a nice tackle, but you have to be darn sure of yourself to trade away Brown. Otherwise, we like these sort of guys later in the draft that we
yep,
feel would be comfortable because offensive tackle veterans, there's not a whole lot out there that I think you'd want starting for you right now.
right, yeah, and that's it's interesting. I like that guys are trying to roll the dice, and I wonder if it's because the cap is down this year, because we've seen a lot of this where guys are getting released, and then you're hearing kind of through the grapevine that they're considering re-signing them, but it's not happening until after the draft.
Yeah.
If it's because of cap situations, or if maybe this is just the way things are moving, I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Uh, Jaws, is K Woody pay the new name for a severance package? It would be an aggressive sack-filled package, is what it would be. So, because K Woody Pay is going to bring the sacks to the league, so we'll see. Okay, so next up, are we going to go edge, or are we talking linebackers?
We can go edge.
Okay. So next up for me, I picked your boy Micah Parsons, who you said to Dallas as the first IDP. I think he's going to be first linebacker taken, but in the second first round pick the Dolphins have. So this is late teens. So this is 18, 19. I think he falls down to the late teens, and I think Miami scoops him up. They have a clear. They have I don't want to say a clear need, but I think they have a clear situation where I can see Parsons starting from day one and making that defense better. He goes to a situation where the team is continuing to rebuild. They're young, but they have some veteran leadership there in the secondary with Xavier Howard and some of those guys that can help a young linebacker with potential red flags with an attitude or maturity or whatever it may be. Obviously, I don't know the young man, so I can't say for certain. I will neither
Yeah.
confirm nor deny it. All I can say is what I've read on the internet, which is 50% right and wrong. So give me Parsons in the teens to the Dolphins. I like him there. If from the IDP perspective, he would still be my top IDP if he goes there as well. So I'm down. Give me it. What say you?
Yeah, so I'm in the same sort of zone, and there's a lot of teams around here that I think could use a guy like that. Um, when you're sitting around sort of where Dallas is, yeah, he could go to the Giants, but I don't think it just really fits what they're looking at doing. Philly, it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, there's a need, but I think there's other higher needs where linebackers more of a luxury. They got by last year to whatever degree they got by with plugging guys in. Um, and Eric Wilson went there on a 1 year deal, so that doesn't fix it, but it's something for the year. Vikings probably not. So now you're looking around the Patriots and the Raiders and the Dolphins, because Arizona I don't see taking him after taking Simmons. I have him at the moment to the Patriots, and sort of the same thing where he would be in a situation where they could use him in a lot of different ways to showcase his skill set,
Mm-hmm.
but also there's a veteran presence in that locker room where isn't going to deal with his crap, and clearly Belichick isn't going to deal with it. And I think putting him in a good situation like that could lead to more maturity if that really is a problem, while also utilizing his skill set. The Patriots, no matter how much money they've been throwing around, sort of like that true linebacker, they really don't have anything exciting. They got Van Noy, which, okay. And I know they've drafted a few guys, but those guys are still more of edge type of guys than true, like a middle linebacker, center field type of guy that you'd want to have at the center of your defense. So I have him there at the moment. So that's what I'm going to go with.
I dig it. I tried to, I considered, I tried to consider a scenario where maybe Parsons slides because of the maturity. And I said, okay, maybe Nick Bolton to the Steelers at the back half of the first round because they feel like a team that would do something crazy at the end of the first round. But
Yeah.
I don't see it. I mean, the Steelers need offensive line help, and there's plenty of other needs where I just couldn't see it. So I tried to find a spicy scenario where Parsons doesn't go in the first round, but I just couldn't do it. So
Unless some sort of Tunsil video comes out before the draft, I agree. And I really don't think there's going to be a whole lot of non-edge linebackers taken. I mean, just looking at what I feel confident in, I mean, 3 with an outside chance of 4. And for a position, a couple years ago, you saw Devin Bush and Devin White both go, I think, the top 10 or 12.
yes.
That's telling you where this just current linebacker group is at, where I don't think you're probably going to see a guy in the top 10.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's just I want Detroit to take a linebacker, but with what probably will be there at 7, I can't see it. And that would be the only spot where I really feel good about. Like, I think Denver goes corner, or they could go corner. Because I'm still a Drew Lock believer, I would say go fix something else and let quarterback continue to develop. But so far they haven't developed a quarterback, so who knows? I could see corner going there, but Parsons is. I don't see him fitting with any of the teams in the top 10 outside of Detroit, with the need, with the situation, with what would be on the board. I mean, it's hard to see. So I'm with you on that. Okay, so now we're to the actual edge position. Now, like we said earlier, edge position, we call it edge because of what Flea Flicker's doing. We're hoping the rest of the world jumps on board with what Flea Flicker's doing because it is a cool change because it's smart. It makes sense for IDP fantasy leagues. MFL, if you watch this, add edge position. Just do it. It's
Please.
a better idea.
So who you got?
Our boy JL from Front Yard Fantasy jumped on. Kraig. He's a big fan.
Came to see me. Well, I'm something anyway, that's for sure.
I'm about to say, I believe you are the first commenting on most shows from 3 to 4 during the week.
Yeah, they over at Front Yard Fantasy. If you haven't checked them out, go subscribe to them and get notifications for them too. Their games they play, which are much more entertaining and creative than this little thing I threw together. They threw me for a curveball this week. I think in draft preparation, they threw out all of their episodes for the week, and as I set reminders, they're all scheduled. And I commented on one for like Wednesday or something this morning, and then I saw the date was wrong. Like, what is going on? So, yeah, they threw a curveball at me.
So what you're saying is they're playing games with your heart right now.
They do. They certainly do.
So they should probably quit playing games with your heart.
But make sure you trade because trading makes fantasy fun.
Do it. I'm trying to work trades today. Now that MFL's back up, I'm making it rain trades pre-draft.
So I've been looking. I have I think 1 in 4. So in one of the Roto Heat leagues that we have, the Superflex, the Dynasty Superflex, it's no defense at all, no kickers. It's just straight offense. I have the 1 pick, which I quote unquote earned, and then the 4 pick, and I have Burrow and Herbert. I think I have Herbert and 2. I have like 2 of the 3 guys from last year. So I'm sitting at a quarterback at 1, and it's like, what do you do here? I'd love to trade back, but everyone's talking about, trade back, get the haul. It's like, I'm not seeing the hauls be offered here. I think a lot of people this year are waiting to see how these quarterbacks play out before figuring out what they want to do in these drafts. And when your draft starts soon after the real draft, it kind of puts you in a time crunch to throw stuff together. So have you seen anything about, like high picks being traded in existing leagues?
I actually in one of my leagues I trade. It's not a super flex though. It is a one QB, but it's full IDP. I wound up trading for a top 10 pick. This is a 32 team league, single copy of players, but it's super hard to get trades done. I'm in the division I'm in. Like guys just don't make trades. Like I think if I remember correctly, I think I had less than 10 trades made in the last 3 years. And
Wow.
anybody who's been in a league with me knows that's just ridiculous. I make trades. Like that's what I do. I wound up having my teams I took over is very similar to what was in the XFL league. It's just a dumpster fire.
Yep.
So I've had to rebuild it, and I rebuilt it by focusing on last year's draft class and 2 years ago's draft class, and I have a lot of picks, and I wound up acquiring, getting through the draft, DK and some of these guys, but I wound up having to trade DeAndre Swift, who I drafted last year, uh, because I have a lot of running backs now. So I wound up trading. Uh, this guy has no quarterback, so I traded him DeAndre Swift and Jameis Winston, and I got Juju, Ashton Davis, 1-9 and 215. So I was. Other than that, I've not seen a top 10 pick in a league I'm in right now trading. Right now I've not seen deals happen. When I go look at the different trade finders out there, I'm not seeing a lot of first round pick movement, and even in Superflex. So you know, it's been a weird year because a lot of the
Yeah.
leagues I'm in, I just haven't seen a lot of movement. We have a Roto Heat Superflex where I have pick 9 and pick 10, and right now I'm trying to trade one of those to see if I can acquire a quarterback. Haven't really seen any movement there. I mean, people just aren't really trading right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, in that league, it's Burrow and Herbert and then PJ Walker are my quarterbacks, and I have pick 1, 4, 10, and 13 from trades. And this was a startup last year with auction. I went super young on purpose. I have Jonathan Taylor, CEH, and J.K. Dobbins. My wide receivers and tight ends are junk. So a good area to focus. And I don't really want to relay all my plans for the world because good old Rick, who's watching on YouTube, he's in the league too. But it's a nice situation to be, and it's just
do
I'd like to
tell.
trade the pick, but no one's biting for it. So we'll have to see how it pans out. Hopefully, people get more excited when they see names to actual teams, and they focus in on their guy where they want to get them. So
Yeah, yeah. And glad to hear everything's good, Rick. I was praying for the niece and hoping all went well. So that's awesome news that things are moving in the right direction for her. It seems like most people had kind of a rough day today. A lot of crazy stuff going on for folks. So hopefully everybody's doing well. That's in the chats. If you guys have comments you want to post, want to ask questions, let us know. We'll answer them. Tonight we're having a little more fun, doing a little bit more of a relaxed IDP show because we've dug into all these IDPs already. So it's draft week. We're going to have a good time. And I make lots of trades, some bad, some not bad. It happens to everybody. Get over it, Rick. Your trades aren't great either. How dare you? So we jumped off. What was your edge player? I know I didn't say mine yet either, but what was your edge player?
yeah, and for those not sort of familiar with it, it's generally speaking sort of like your base 4-3 defensive ends, and then your 3-4 outside linebackers are what normally are encompassed currently with the edge setup. And I've gone back and forth on two guys. I think you're looking at probably a max of 5, maybe 6, depending on how things shake out. But 5 is what I'm putting at my cap at the moment for sort of these edge guys taken. And I'll tell you, I've gone back and forth on Pay and Jalen Phillips. And it's one of those things I've had both up higher in mocks as I'm looking at it and trying to get a feel for it. I really do believe that Phillips has the higher ceiling, but he also has the lower floor. And I think Pay's ceiling is a little bit lower, but his floor is a lot higher. Phillips was one of those like top 5 guys coming out of college. He has that complete skill set you want. He showcased it last year when he went to Miami and took over for Russo. I think I read he actually had the same jersey number, so people
I
got
think
him
so.
confused to the start. But yeah, he just balled out, which is what people had expected of him before injuries almost just cost him his career, like a couple freak injuries.
Hmm.
So it's nice to see him back, but you still got to wonder because you don't know these people, and that's what the NFL teams are digging into. How committed are they? Like, where are they physically? He gets a couple more concussions, he just might be done.
Right.
And those are real serious things to worry about. So at the moment, I have your guy taken, Mr. Pay, and as tough as it is to sort of nail this down, I have him to the Colts. So
That's literally the exact same thing I picked.
is it?
Yep. A late first round pick, K. Pay makes sense to me because they don't have Houston anymore. They have a true need at the edge position. I mean, it just I don't see them taking a shot on a guy like Phillips because they do a lot of 4-3, and I don't know. Like Phillips seems more to me like he would be great as a stand-up kind of 3-4 outside linebacker, where Pay seems more hand in the dirt ready.
Yeah.
So I'm complete 100% agree, and I really didn't see that coming. I figured we wouldn't even be close.
Like I said, there's other positions. I think the earliest either of them would go is Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota still has a real need
Yeah.
for defensive end, especially if Hunter goes. I mean, then it's a complete crapshoot. But I don't. I mean, if they fall in love with, Pace consistency and floor or Phillips's upside, I could see him going there. But I think they're probably focusing elsewhere. Patriots, I think they've addressed it enough, and same thing with Arizona. I don't think they really fit. Pay doesn't fit that well there anyway.
No,
And
not
like
at
you said,
all.
the Raiders could certainly do it. I don't think it's a need with the three guys that we had mentioned, Farrell, Crosby, and Yannick that they just signed. Raiders do weird things. Um,
Yeah.
Miami could definitely use an edge guy too. So like you had someone else at 18 to Miami, I think.
Yeah, I had
Parsons.
Parsons. Yep.
I think that's another spot, but it feels like if no one goes to the Vikings, you're probably getting closer to the 20s or into the 20s before you're having one of these guys go, which will push the rest of them down. I mean, the three that I had, Pay, Phillips, Ojulari, I think gets in the first round, and then Basham and Jason Owe from Penn State, I
Yeah, they're
think are
probably
the other
second round
guys.
guys. Yeah.
I could see sneaking in because someone like Buffalo has like one of their real needs is pass rush.
Yeah.
Their guys Addison and Hughes are like 33 and 34, and they're their starters. I know they drafted Epinesa last year and didn't play a whole lot, but they still need help on that defensive line. Same thing with Tampa. Not a whole lot of real needs. They could take an edge guy to learn and then replace Pierre Paul, who's a free agent after a year, and he'll be cheaper certainly. So it's really going to depend on what you're wanting at the end of these drafts. But there's a lot of even cornerbacks. I mean, heck, cornerbacks, you're going to see a ton of these guys go in the first two rounds. I mean, there's just a lot of
Right.
talent out there.
Right.
So
Yeah. Seeing as we both agreed on K. Pay to the Colts, I'll go crazy and say, you know what? What if K. Pay and Phillips don't get drafted before pick 30? Like maybe they fall to 31, 32, second round. Give me Aziz Ojolari to Buffalo. That was the other one I was kicking around as well. I think Aziz Ojolari is the third edge player taken in the draft, but seeing as we both agreed that doesn't make for fun. So you know, Buffalo has a clear need at edge, like you said. So Ojolari is a fun player. I think he's got a lot of upside, and I think a team like Buffalo with what they do, I think he can fit in and step in and be real nice for them. They have other needs. I mean, they could go offensive line. They could do some other. They could go splashy and go get a running back or something like that if
yeah,
they wanted to. But their defense is aging. I mean, when you think about what they've got a little bit of youth, but they're not getting any younger at some of the positions along the line. So, Ed Oliver could use somebody like that's young
yeah.
with a big motor that could get after the quarterback. So, I'll throw Aziz Ojolari to Buffalo there, but I still am firmly in the court that both Phillips and K. Pay go before him. But crazier things have happened. Maybe the physicals and the medicals come back concerning about Phillips. He slides down the draft board. K. Pay, maybe something comes up that we don't know about, and he slides down. Then Ojolari becomes kind of the next man up. Like I don't see Rousseau going in the first round, even though I'm
Yeah.
still seeing people mocking him in the first round. I just don't think there's enough of a sample size, and what we did see was fine, but I'm not going on. Like, if I'm a guy who's guessing because I didn't get a lot of face time with these guys, I'm not putting my career on a kid with 1 year of production
Yeah.
and not much else.
And to that point, if you're interested in mock drafts and you're looking to get a 1 year or lifetime subscription to rookiedraftguide.com, check out Discord, which we're in. Check out Facebook. The group has a link. Check out my Twitter. There's links there. We're running a contest. It's due, I think, by like noon on Thursday. That way, no one's getting last minute information before they submit it or something, like minutes up to the draft. But there are nice prizes for that, and you can compete against me. And I think Sully's sending one in just to see how stuff does. So see if you're going to give Sully your 2 cents on the draft this time around.
But
we got one more question, and hopefully we don't have the exact same answer for this.
we might.
Total defensive players. And first I'll just ask you, because I do you think there's more offensive players taken than defensive players?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I did too. Okay. So what number did you come up with your magic formula?
So this was a fun one. Like, I prepared a lot for this show. I did quite a few mock drafts. Like, I had a meeting today that was not very involved for me. I was watching and listening more than anything. So I had one screen up where I was prepping for tonight. So I went back and looked through like the last 6 or 7 years worth of NFL drafts and counted up how many defensive players were taken every year. So I went round by round, figured out, how many went. Then I averaged it out, and I'm going with my average because I have no other idea. 124 is my number. 124, because on average, it is somewhere between 123 and 129, I think, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's like they're really in the 120s. They, some rounds, like third and fourth round and fifth round, sometimes you would see 20 plus players taken, but most of the time it was in the teens every round. So in the first round, interestingly enough, you typically see less defensive players taken, at least over the last 7 years from what I've been able to research and find. So give me 124 defensive players drafted in the 2021 NFL draft.
And I may have written this wrong. I will get to your answer, but I had it written as the first round. How many do you think go in the first round?
Oh, give me 14.
Gosh darn it, that was my exact number.
How dare you?
I will give us a chance to have the kissing cousins, as they call it, if we hit 15. No, I don't want to go to 16 because that's like half of it.
There's no way.
That's too high.
I did. In 2019 was the only draft they got above 15, and that was 18 defensive players taken in 2019. Otherwise, it was 15 and under every year for the last, like, before that. So
I'll go 15. That's fine.
And even looking at it, when I did my mock, I only had like 12. It was like,
yeah.
Well, that's not right. So
I had 12 in my for sure pile, and that's why I threw a couple extra on there, assuming there's going to be guys that I miss or weird stuff happens between now and then. So I'll go 15. That's fine.
The Eric Stokes hype is real, and people draft him in the first round.
Yeah, or I've heard a lot of Asante Samuel Jr. talk at the end of the first round. More of a second round guy to me. If Dallas ended up getting him in the second round, if they went a different round first round, I'd be all right with that. Assuming they're not taking Mac Jones at 10 or something crazy, because who knows what Jerry's hopped up on. But yeah, any of the things that I've seen for Dallas, I'd be all right with them doing. But they've been known to throw curveballs before. So getting to the big one, I had it lower. I had it similar to your range. I had 118.
So I never saw, of the years I looked, it never dipped below 120. So I like your 118. I think that's fun. And I could see it because this defensive class, I mean, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's top heavy, and there's some intriguing guys throughout, but this could be a year where you see a lot of offensive guys drafted.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it just seems like the league is so hyper-focused on offense right now and how to get these different pieces fit in and maximized. People are following trends, more wide receiver heavy sets, more guys that you can play in multiple positions like a Pitts or a Kadarius Toney that I know you guys have talked a lot about on the Tuesday show. With yeah, there's a lot of things you could do with him, but where's he going? And then if you're not going to set one thing for him, does he turn into like a Lynn Bowden that hopefully he's not traded before he plays for you, but you're not completely sure what you're doing with him either. Um, but that's the way the league is going, just with sort of those more gadget guys having more uses as people get more creative. Um, so I think that matters for the draft, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So, I mean, like I've mentioned multiple times throughout this process, I'm really intrigued to see how the scouts, like how they've really had to up their game for this NFL draft because of all the virtualness of it
Yeah.
all. Not being able to be face to face with the players, having to do Zoom meetings. I mean, like you're not seeing full body language. So if a guy, a lot of these guys are just on their phone cameras, and maybe if they're just holding up, you're not seeing body language. You're not seeing a lot of the just kind of the ticks or things about players that guys would just notice. These scouts that are guys that have been doing it forever just know things, like they have got kind of tribal knowledge where they saw it 100 times over. This type of player, this kind of attitude, this kind of person, whatever. I'll be interested to see how that all turns into what the NFL teams do come this weekend. I don't know if we'll really truly understand the fallout of this for another few years, but I think it's kind of a fun. Does this shift a league to doing other things, being more virtual when it comes to scouting and prepping? Maybe it makes it easier for guys like us who aren't truly scouts but would love to be. But because then there's more film that's available, more ways to see what the guys are seeing. It's really interesting to me just how it's all kind of transpired because it has made film a little bit more available. I found a lot more film for guys this year than I have in previous years, but I've also kind of gotten better about where to look, how to find what we need to find, and it's all growing. But it's interesting to me how it all transpires. It's fascinating. Uh, I just don't know if it really is going to make a difference or not.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting part of it is it sort of forced some of like more of this analytical type stuff where they're talking about, okay, we weren't able to sit here and time the way we would want a 40-yard dash, for whatever value that has to you. There's been talk for quite a number of years about the whole GPS tracking, and so you can find that on some players like Trey Lance had quoted that he was GPS tracked in one game, and then his speed from point A to point B or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that was out there, but it seems like the pandemic, for good or bad, in terms of the NFL's process, is facilitated more of that just having to come up to the forefront. But at the same time, like a year like this, to your point, a lot of this data you're questioning, you're finding out, and this happens every year, but it seems like more this year where this guy is 6'2", 180. It's like he's barely 6 foot and 160 or something like that, and it's like this throws if you're into the analytical part of it, that throws all sorts of models and stuff off. So I think it's forcing an improvement, but I don't know that we're really going to get it this year necessarily, just because of how odd it is, and hopefully not having to be this way anymore in terms of if you want to have people there, you can with X precautions, but also having more of the data
Oh,
available.
for sure. I mean, we're even going to see it this weekend. Cleveland is hosting the NFL draft, and fans are supposed to be there, although a lot of the players aren't. I mean, I know, a lot of the first round guys are going to do virtual, Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence and some of these guys. So it's interesting how the NFL is trying to get fans back, but then the players are still kind of not. I mean, it's just a different, everything's different still, but it'll be interesting to see how it all transpires. Joss has a question. He says, Kyle Van Noy back to the wire now that he's back in Cleveland or Cleveland on the mind, back to New England with Judon, etc. He was really good on a per game basis last year. So is Van Noy a guy that you're going to roster back in New England, or is he Dunzo in your mind, Craig?
If I am in a league where my team is big enough that it's fine to roster him and I have him now, I'm not just going to cut him loose, but I'm not making an effort to go get him. What Miami was doing with their linebackers last year is very different than how he had been used previously in New England, um, just in terms of even pure snap counts and percentages throughout the year. And I know New England has a lot of younger guys that they're interested in. We'll see how it pans out. But Hightower is going to be coming back. They still have Jennings. is it Uchi they drafted
Mm-hmm.
last year from Michigan that came on a little bit at the end of the year. So I just don't have the confidence that there might not be an overall better necessarily set of linebackers. The way Van Noy would be playing, but there's going to be enough of them deployed in a way that he won't get the same sort of playing time, which I feel, looking at his career, is largely where the stats came from last year.
Yep, definitely a depth piece more than anything at this point in his career, and especially in New England. Because offensive or defensive, New England and fantasy, I think they hate fantasy football people because you just never.
It wouldn't surprise me if Bill does. I believe that completely.
It's the way it is. Belichick and his dog hate fantasy football, and I guess when you've won that many rings, you can do whatever you want with fantasy football.
Yeah, I'm not questioning him. Just like right now I'm not questioning any of these teams. I'm sure you'll get into more of it on the show tomorrow for the offense. But some of these picks where everyone's just convinced this guy sucks, it's like let's just back off and wait because we don't know nearly what these teams do, and maybe we're right. But I think you always say, or it's Sully, maybe both of you, we're wrong more often than we're right. So
Yeah, and it's tough. When and I know Sully's done a great job digging back through the history of hit rates of these guys in the different positions, and it really is a guessing game because yes, they may have been great college players. Do they fit your scheme? Do they have the attitude, the work ethic? There's so many intangibles that you really can't get from interviews and watching the film. Some of it you can, but some of the intangibles you can't get. So you know, it's a guessing game. We're here to try to help you make as educated a guess as possible. And in the end, hopefully we've entertained you.
yeah,
Are you not entertained? Because if you aren't, then, well, we got some work to do. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I already watched.
Oh, yeah.
I already watched draft day all the way through once.
Yep.
And if you're in Discord, I had posted something crazy asking everybody what they, if they watch draft day as silly as it is on draft week. And there were others just as crazy as me. I typically try to watch it at least once or twice throughout the week before draft day because it's a fun way to just kick back and get ready for the week.
Yep.
We're to this point. All the hard work is done. We now just have to kind of sit back and see what happens, and anything's possible. So that is it. We're done. Show's over. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We love you guys in the chat. Thank you for blowing it up and having a good conversation with us and having some fun. If you guys come across this video after the fact, thank you for watching. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon, stay up to date. Posting comments and doing all that's great because it tells YouTube you like what you're seeing here. And if you like what you see, like what you see. We are going to be back tomorrow night. We've got special guest Addison Hayes from DLF's going to be on. It's going to be fun. We're going to do something very similar, but on the offensive side, it's going to be us and Sully chit-chatting about that, having a good time, just trying to get you guys ready for draft week and continue to build that hype, give you a little bit of sizzle to go with that draft week fun that we're having. So Kraig, I thank you for hanging out with me as always, brother.
Yep.
We will be back again next week, and once we get back next week, it's going to be over. So enjoy it while it's here, because we've got something football related, and then it'll be gone for another few months. Back to watching baseball and basketball and all the other things. So you guys have a good night. We love you, and we will talk to you again soon.